heart out.
Hey, everybody. This is Write Your Heart Out, and I'm Kayla Ogden.
And I'm Rachel Sear.
And today we are following up on our homework that we decided to do last episode. This was something introduced by Rachel's professor. We are going to read the first little chunk of, each of us are going to read from two of our favorite books and see what they did and what we can learn from that. So, Rachel, what was the first one that you wanted to do?
Okay, so the first one that I looked up, because it was the one that came to mind right when we started this, or when we talked about this last episode, was The Divine Secrets of the Ya-Ya Sisterhood. Have you ever read that book?
No.
Okay, it is one of my favorite books of all time. I read it when I was like a teenager, and there's this very complicated relationship between this alcoholic mother and her daughter. And it's the book's from the daughter's point of view, who's now a successful playwright. She had written a play or a story based off of her childhood. So now it's the ongoing complicated relationship of mother-daughter.
Okay.
Okay. So I went to this one because I could not, it's always held a special place in my heart, but I would have no idea in a million years how the first page had gone, right? Okay. So this first chunk says, tap dancing child abuser. That's what the Sunday New York Times from March 8th, 1993 had called Vivi. The pages of the week-old leisure arts section lay scattered on the floor next to Sita as she curled up in the bed, covers pulled tightly around her, portable phone on the pillow next to her head. There had been no sign that the theater critic would go for blood. Roberta Lydell had been so chummy, so sisterly seeming during the interview that Sita had felt that she'd made a new girlfriend. After all, in her early review, Roberta had already proclaimed the production of Women on the Cusp, which Sita had directed at the Lincoln Center, to be a miraculous event in American theater. With subtle finesse, the journalist had lulled Sita into cozy, false sense of intimacy as she pumped her for personal information.
Whoa. Oh my God. I would never think that I was allowed to write that for a starting paragraph in a book.
Right?
So that was written in the 90s?
Oh, that's a good question. What year did that come out? So one interesting thing is this book has a prologue, and the prologue gives a nice snapshot of their childhood. And then it jumps into this first chapter. And so when I was doing our homework, I was kind of curious as to if I should read from the prologue or if I should just do the first chapter as we talked about. And I don't know, because the first paragraph of the prologue, I mean, that sets up that first paragraph so beautifully.
Oh, because do you already know who these two women, the names are? The Nee and VC or whatever?
Sita and Vivi, I guess. Vivi.
Are those the sisters?
No, Vivi is the mom, and Sita is the daughter. Do you want me to read the first paragraph of the prologue?
Sure.
Okay, so we're jumping back in time. Sita is a girl again in the hot heart of Louisiana, the bayou world of Catholic saints and voodoo queens. It's Labor Day 1959 at Pecan Grove Plantation, on the day of her daddy's annual dove hunt. While the men sweat and shoot, Sita's gorgeous mother, Vivi, and her gang of girlfriends, the Ya-Yas, play bourrée, a cutthroat Louisiana poker, inside the air-conditioned house. On the kitchen blackboard is scrawled, "Smoke, drink, and never think," borrowed from Billie Holiday. When the ladies take a break, they feed the petite Ya-Yas, the Ya-Ya's offspring, sickly sweet maraschino cherries from the fridge in the wet bar.
Okay, that is much more in line with what I would expect.
Totally. But, so I love that that's the prologue. Because it's like, no, we're just jumping right in with the first paragraph of the chapter 1. What makes a prologue and what makes a first chapter? A prologue is a snapshot of information you need to know. Is that what a prologue is supposed to be?
So that's a good question about the prologues, and I don't actually really know. Like for me, in my book, I have a prologue that it's from a point in time in the protagonist's life that doesn't show up at any other point in the book. It's like we never see her as a child, but I want to show this moment in her childhood and show the way that her mother is like abusive towards her so that we understand their relationship now. Okay. And that's what the rest of the book is like.
Well, I think that's that's perfect. Exactly.
I feel like a prologue is like context that you don't really want to show it either way, and you want the reader to understand it right from the jump.
Sure. I think that's a beautiful way to say that, actually. Good job. Yeah.
Okay. But I don't know if your professor would have said that the prologue counted in terms of this assignment.
Right.
You know what? When I was younger, I would skip the prologue and the epilogue.
I often did. And usually if there was like a full page of poetry at the beginning, I was like, no, not for me.
Yeah. And I wonder, it's like we are people who read a lot and were smart. So it's like how many people skipped prologues for so long. So at the same time, I think your story does have to make sense if you cut it off, because
Absolutely.
some people might not read it. And in my story, at the very end, something from the prologue like comes back, and it's supposed to be this moment of like, oh, but I don't know if that's going to be okay. You
Right.
know?
Right.
So
I'm going to ask him tomorrow. I'm going to make a mental note to ask my professor tomorrow. In this assignment, which one would he prefer?
yeah.
You know, because I think that it should have to be chapter 1, which is why I read that first.
Yeah. But chapter 1 didn't, to me, in that book, did not do the business that the first few lines should. So the things for me about that, and obviously we want to hear your thoughts, it's your book, is that it introduces way too many people and too many like titles. Also, I think it's epistolary, so I think it's it's supposed to be an article from a newspaper or something. Is it?
I don't know.
I was just like, I just felt very confused and disoriented. Whereas the first paragraph from the prologue, it was like, it really put me in a place and time. Like I could taste the maraschino cherries.
Sure.
I could feel the sweat on my brow from shooting the doves. And
Yeah,
you
you're
know,
on the bayou.
yeah, I'm on
Yeah.
the bayou. I thought it was gorgeous, like absolutely gorgeous the way that she wrote that.
Yeah.
What's her name? Who is that? The author.
Oh, gosh, that's a good question. I want to reread that book, actually.
So
Let's
she,
see.
it's showing me the movie, which is bullshit.
The movie is not, the movie really is not worth it, truly. It's also showing me the movie.
Rebecca Wells.
Yes, there you go.
In
And
2002.
okay. That's when the movie came out.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I was going to say, no, I was younger than 2002, for sure.
Oh, there's 3 books. Did you read all 3 books?
I read at least the first 2. I must have read the 3. I loved it so much. Let's see. What year did it come out?
October 16th, 1998.
It came out on my birthday.
That's your birthday?
Yeah. I mean, not 1998, obviously, but
So what, you were like,
I was
do you want to give away your age?
13.
You were 13.
In 1980.
Oh my God.
1998.
13. What a great year to read a book.
Totally.
I mean, those are the books that really shape you, I feel like, is those special ones from 13.
it's true.
And you weren't reading fucking Sweet Valley High. You were reading this Ya-Ya Sisterhood stuff.
I had a complicated relationship with my mom. Yeah. So these types of books, I felt very seen, you know?
What were your notes about the first paragraphs that you were going to share with your class or whatever?
Oh, I didn't really have notes necessarily. The assignment was find paragraphs and just, did it capture you? Like, is it the type of paragraph that wanted you to keep reading? And I would say yes for that one. I was like, oh, well, this is like, let's see. Tap dancing child. I mean, like,
Oh, yeah, the tap
and like
dancing.
her being deceived by this journalist. I definitely remember being like, what the fuck is happening? Honestly, I'm curious as if I had read the prologue at that time, or I know I've read the book so many times. Maybe I just
What was that very first line, the tap dancing?
tap dancing child abuser. That's what the Sunday New York Times from March 8th, 1993 had called Vivi.
Wow. I mean, that's a good first line.
It is. It's a good
Yeah.
first line.
Yeah.
I mean, I think actually if you were, so I read 2 paragraphs actually, now that I'm thinking about it. And if you just cut it off at the first paragraph, leisure art section lay scattered on the floor next to Sita as she curled up on the bed, covers pulled tightly around her, portable phone on the pillow next to her head. That's a great little snapshot. This was written, you assume, did she write this? You know, like, was this written about her? Is she the tap dancing child abuser? She's curled up, covers tightly pulled around, so clearly she's in distress. Like, it leaves you with a good amount of questions.
Mm-hmm. So you like it?
I like it.
It's planting questions in your mind that makes you want to keep
Definitely.
turning the pages.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, what's yours?
So I'm going to read from, this is a new book, which I pre-ordered. I'm always so proud of myself when I pre-order books from my favorite authors, because for one thing, that helps them get on the like New York Times
Sure.
bestsellers
Yeah.
list. And for another thing, sometimes you'll get the book in your hand before it even hits the shelves in like Barnes & Noble, and that makes me feel very cool. So this is Vanishing World by Sayaka Murata. She wrote Convenience Store Woman and Earthlings, and she's amazing. She's like wonderfully weird, and she does a lot of speculative stuff. So this book is bonkers, and it takes place in either the future or an alternative world where people don't raise their own offspring. Like women give birth to children, but then they get put into these child centers and they all get raised in a certain way. And then the community, men and women both, every child calls every man and woman mother. And every man and woman is supposed to mother the children whenever they see them and shower them in love and affection. And having sex with your husband is considered incest.
No. What in the world?
And the way to get pregnant is through artificial insemination has become like very clean and efficient. And when people have sex, only like 10% of the population even has sex. And they don't have sex for making babies. They just have sex for pleasure. But it's considered like the right thing to do is to masturbate, not to like really have sex. It's not illegal to have sex, but it's frowned upon. Yeah, okay, so it's like a crazy...
Yeah.
So the prologue for this one I definitely don't think is... I'm just going to do the first two little paragraphs.
Sure.
Until I went to elementary school, I lived entirely in a world my mother had created. I did go to daycare, but I don't remember much about it. What comes to mind when I think back to that time is the small old wooden house in Chiba, where I lived with my mother, just the two of us. It's very simple.
Very.
Simple language. I mean, this has been translated from the Japanese, but I don't know that it like necessarily grips me.
No.
But it's very easy to read, so it doesn't make me feel like, oh, I'm gonna... That one, the one that you just read from the Ya-Ya Sisterhood, it made me feel nervous that I was getting into this, that I wasn't gonna be able to follow it, that it was gonna take a lot of work for me to like deal with. But this one, I could read. This isn't the type of book that I would put down after a few paragraphs. I would give it I would read like at least a few chapters because you can just whiz through them.
Sure.
Right? Like it just,
Although the first sentence all by itself raises its own questions. Until I went to elementary school, I lived entirely in a world my mother had created. Yeah. I mean, that sets some stuff up right there.
Yeah, it does. Okay. It's like you didn't have a community, obviously.
Right. And is your mom crazy?
Yeah.
Is she not? Like, what does this mean?
What was the world that she created?
Right. Mm-hmm. Were you like a homeschool little, or as before elementary school, but your mom can create any kind of world for you.
Which is freaky.
Yeah. I mean, we really have that power as moms to just, until you go to school, moms can do whatever they want.
That's true.
I mean, the parent at home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sorry. Rachel, come on. Okay, what's your next one?
Do you have anything else to add about that one? I don't want to cut you out.
No, I don't. I think I love her writing and I love the simplicity of it. Yeah, it's like you could never accuse Murata of purple prose. She's
Wait, can you explain purple prose?
Oh, purple prose, yeah. So that's when you embellish everything so much. Like there's like all these adjectives and all of these beautiful metaphors and you're just going like these long sentences that, I think sometimes probably this Thorns and Roses lady might have
I was just about to say. So you mean the Court of Thorns and Roses?
Yeah, when she's like
we're hot. We're like fuchsia or magenta. What's the color?
We are eggplant.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, eggplant over there. So, yeah. Which some people love, that literary fiction is more likely to have these beautiful sentences. And I think it can work when they're timely, when they're like inserted in the right place here and there. But overall, when I'm reading, I want things to be very clear and to the point.
And moving.
Yeah, and moving and sort of like minimal, but like beautiful in that way. And she's really, really good at that.
Yeah, I would say the first paragraphs of that book, Vanishing World, definitely move you. You're moving forward. You're getting somewhere immediately. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the Divine Secrets, they're setting a scene, whereas this is already you're already on the walk.
Right. It's like narrative rather than she's looking back rather than you're putting you right in scene like your book. Maybe I should read a bit of the prologue from this book,
Vanishing
World.
Prologues.
Because I was like, I don't want to read this prologue. I mean, for this, but because we're kind of discussing that. So
Sure.
this is the beginning of her prologue. Aren't we kind of the opposite of Adam and Eve? A boyfriend once asked me long ago. I was 20 years old and had taken this boyfriend home at a time when I knew nobody would be in. I'd been dozing off in sheets that were infused with our body heat and opened my eyes a crack as this curious question came fluttering down along with the sound of the rain outside. So that was a little bit beautiful, the way she wrote that, you know, like a question coming fluttering down, like with the sound of the rain. But yeah, that is curiosity inducing because it's like, why would you be the opposite of Adam and Eve? What
Totally.
would that mean?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what was your next one?
Okay, my next one is The Push, which was a book that we read for our book group a few years ago, in case it hasn't been obvious thus far. Kayla and I are part of a book group with a larger group of women, and we read everything from, we've read a few memoirs, we've read
Sci-fi even?
a little sci-fi.
Anything
Most
weird.
people kind of poo-poo sci-fi in our group.
Oh.
But we read a pretty wide range, I'd say.
Rom-coms, some...
Anything but fantasy, really, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, we haven't read any fantasy.
No.
We had to do that on our own.
Okay, but The Push was a core-shaking book in our group. We read it at a time when all of us were pretty in the thick of postpartum in some way or another. And I highly recommend reading The Push. It was one of the ones that really sticks with our entire group to this day. And if you have just had a baby, reader beware, it's a little freaky.
Yeah.
It's not quite a thriller, but...
Ooh, I'm like shuddering. It's like so definitely triggering.
Yes. But I distinctly remember when I was getting towards the end of the book, it was so anxiety provoking for me that I woke up at 4 a.m. and got on my Peloton and was like just writing and listening to it because I was like, if I stop moving while I'm listening to this, I will probably just start shaking. Like I was so anxious while reading it or listening to it. Okay, so here's how this one starts. Your house glows at night like everything inside is on fire. The drapes she chose for the windows look like linen, expensive linen. The weave is loose enough that I can usually read your mood. I can watch the girl flip her ponytail while she finishes homework. I can watch the little boy toss tennis balls at the 12-foot ceiling while your wife lunges around the living room in leggings, reversing the day's mess. Toys back in the basket, pillows back on the couch.
Dude, knowing how it ends.
Yeah. I don't remember that first paragraph.
No.
And I don't remember that it alludes to the fact that she had been watching that family.
Yeah.
Ooh, I just got chills again. That book was wild.
It was wild. That is chilling as fuck knowing what happens.
I hated that book and I love it so much.
I know. I can't believe I couldn't find it. Rachel was like, hey, do you have the hard copy? And I'm like, yeah, of course. It's like one of my favorite books. And then I looked at my bookshelf and it wasn't there. I must have given it to someone, but I don't know who. It's kind of a weird gift.
I mean, it was such a good book, though. I know I've recommended it to people, so that's probably what happened.
Yeah, I probably gave it to someone.
Oh, man. Okay.
So, but say we didn't know what happens.
Sure. I'd be like, oh, wow, this woman's a stalker. She's like looking at people through the window, and she clearly knows this man.
Yes.
And she's watching his family.
And she's watching the wife and everything.
And she like refers to the girl flipping her ponytail and then the little boy tossing tennis balls. It's just creepy.
Yeah, it is so creepy. So that's a really good on brand. Like it matches the tone of the rest of the book. And it's very cool to have something that if you go back to the second time, it just gives you chills. And like your mouth falls open and you're like, oh, I wouldn't have known who this was until basically like maybe 2/3 of the way through the book.
Totally. Yeah. Okay, so now since we have been talking about prologues, the full prologue of this book is all about how you hear your mother's heartbeat. You come from your mother, egg that has been in her body, was in her grandmother's body. And then that perfectly sums up the push in, like, she's questioning the whole time, like, is this me? Is this my daughter? Is this what is happening?
Yes. So a major question in this book, The Push, is like nature versus nurture. Mm-hmm. There's a child in the book who, as the reader, you have to decide, is this child really evil? And if the child is evil, is it because the grandmother was evil?
Mm-hmm.
was it sort of like passed down genetically, or is the child reacting to her mother being neglectful?
Or has the woman been imagining it her whole time?
Yeah, or is the woman going through this postpartum psychosis where she believes that her daughter is evil when really she's just like a kid being a kid? So for her prologue to talk about how your egg first came to be inside your mother's body when it was a 4-month-old fetus. So your mother developed an egg for you when she was inside your grandmother. So you were inside your grandmother for like 5 months.
Which means the pulses of her stress levels and blood and all of that affected your creation.
Yes. And that they actually have really, really interesting studies about that. How like
It's fascinating.
it's fascinating how like if a mother was in a really stressful, like a war-torn country and she was starving and stuff, like your grandmother, like you might have a way more of a propensity to become obese. Your body might hold on to fat and calories more than someone else because your genes figured out that there was like scarcity from your grandmother's life.
It's so fascinating.
Yeah.
I hate that and I love it so much. Humans are wild.
Okay, so Ashley Drain, that example, I think that was a masterpiece.
I truly do.
Yes.
If we still have such visceral reaction to this day, I mean, we read that when I was living in Sonoma while we were remodeling this house, which was over 3 years ago. So we had to have read that book 4 years ago and still have this visceral of a reaction.
Yeah, I think that if it was 4 years ago, Cassidy would have been an infant.
Right. And Graham was 1. He turned 2 when we lived there, so he would have been 1.5. So yeah.
Whoa. So yeah, when you said that a lot of us were like still in the postpartum phase, I was like, oh, I don't think I was. But now that you mention it, I'm like, damn, I was either pregnant or like had a new baby.
Yeah. I think you had just had Cassidy, if I remember correctly.
So
Okay, yeah. What's your next?
I'll do this one because the other one is too similar. So this is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. It came out, I believe, in the 90s, but it's had a major resurgence on Book Talk. It's basically the epitome of dark academia. I don't remember that much that happens in this because I read it so long ago. But yeah, it's like a group of new adult friends who are living at a university, and it's dark. There's sort of like a whodunit kind of death situation, I think.
Okay.
And Donna Tartt is a master. She takes 10 years to write each of her books.
Wow.
And we all just wait on the edges of our seats with bated breath. She also wrote The Goldfinch. So she has a prologue.
Okay, well, let's read the chapter and then come back to the prologue.
Okay, so chapter 1. Does such a thing as the fatal flaw, that showy dark crack running down the middle of a life, exist outside literature? I used to think it didn't. Now I think it does. And I think that mine is this: a morbid longing for the picturesque at all costs.
A little confusing in all honesty. Like, I'm like, oh my goodness, where is this going to go?
So she's saying that the fatal flaw was just something that you read about in books. So this character longs for the picturesque, and her longing is morbid, and she longs for it at all costs.
Yeah. I mean, it's so many questions.
At all costs. Like, you want to be sitting on a porch looking out over like a grand vista or an ocean scene, like a sunset with the perfect drink and lover next to you, like at all costs. Like, you want it to look good. Like, that picturesque means it looks good.
I assume. Yeah, I mean, that's how I read that.
Yeah,
or hear that.
She wrote this before people said Instagrammable, but I feel like that's kind of what she's saying. This person wants her life to be Instagrammable at all costs. Or his life. I forget. So that's weird. There's like a unlikable narrator probably from Jump.
Okay, let's do a
So now here's the prologue.
Okay.
The snow in the mountains was melting, and Bunny had been dead for several weeks before we came to understand the gravity of our situation. He'd been dead for 10 days before they found him, you know. It was one of the biggest manhunts in Vermont history. State troopers, the FBI, even an army helicopter. The college closed, the dye factory in Hampton shut down, people coming from New Hampshire, upstate New York, as far away as Boston.
Wow. Okay. Shit's getting real.
Yeah.
Has gotten real.
So
shit was real.
Shit was real. Her prologue is like 1.5 pages, and it's saying that these people are in trouble a few weeks after Bunny had been dead. So
Right.
it seems like they knew he was dead, but other people didn't really.
Right.
But then once it becomes clear that he's dead, it's a big fucking deal. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh shit. They didn't realize it would be such a big deal that Bunny was dead, but it is.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, this is a masterpiece, and I don't even know if it's a cult following when so many people love it so much, but
Can I borrow it?
yeah, sure. I'll leave it here.
Perfect. Give it to me. Put it in my hot little hands right now.
So, I mean, I don't know. I think that that's enticing.
It's
and
enticing.
cool.
Yeah, I feel like I'm left with more questions than answers by those paragraphs. And I, in a way that's like, okay, I could keep going with this.
Yeah, you've got to
Yeah.
have questions.
And it's interesting the difference in like scene setting or just raising a bunch of questions like in this one, or just let's go for a walk together like in the Vanishing World one.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like they're definitely different types of lead-ins
Yes.
that are all effective.
And sometimes I feel like with classes and courses about how to get published and stuff like that, it's like they'll say that the very first line has to like grab you and make you want to read the rest of the book, or else an agent or an editor will just put it down. And sometimes I feel like when a first line is too snappy or good, like say the first line was, I'm a nightmare dressed as a daydream. One of Taylor Swift's favorites.
I was going to say, isn't that
Favorite, it's her favorite line she's ever written. Say that was not written by Taylor Swift. That was the first line of, baby, I'm a nightmare dressed like a daydream. I would be like, okay, that is so snappy. That is so cool and fun, whatever. But I feel a little bit manipulated when the first paragraph is so almost like marketing.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, I can see that. Like
It's
that
sort of like,
means you have a lot to live up to if you're going to start that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So unless you're going to be slapping people in the face left and right, like you would have to have a real powerful thing happening after that one line.
Yeah, it has to be like super voicey all throughout with
Right.
lots of zingers. Like when people start with a zinger, I get kind of annoyed. So that's why I kind of like the quiet confidence of the Sayaka Murata first lines, because it's like, she's like, bitch, you know I'm going to take you there. You read The Convenience Store Woman and Earthlings, and you are just salivating for my next book. She knows.
Okay, so now we got to talk about your short story and reactions to it, because what was your first paragraph? Oh, what
It's
was your
not that
first paragraph?
good.
I mean, it was.
This is so the first two paragraphs of my short story are the ones that I want to rework because
Oh.
one of my friends, Blair, who's a writer that I really respect, she kind of mentioned like maybe I could show these things, but the first line is, I'm the only psychiatrist in the building who keeps evening hours. For a lot of people, it's the only time they can squeeze in therapy, and it feels good to be the one who makes that possible. I have a full patient list. So basically, the reason why I put this there was because I wanted the narrator to be likable at first. She's a very complicated type of character. She's not super attractive, and she isn't a great therapist actually
No, yeah.
to this young man. So I'm like, I don't want people to be glad if she like falls off a cliff or something. Like I want her to be complicated, but I want her to actually also have good qualities. So to me, that shows good qualities. Like she stays around at night. She's serving a bunch of people who need therapy who can't come in during the day.
Well, hold on. I like that first paragraph.
Oh, you
I'm
do?
going to disagree with your friend.
Okay.
Because so we were just talking to my husband before we started recording, and one of the things that he said was that further on, maybe lighting should have come into play. Lighting did come into play. It's evening hours. So like it actually sets it up in a really great way. I think that it does make her likable, and she has a full patient list, and like I like it. I think
Yeah.
it sets her up in a good way, and I don't think that what else are you going to show?
You're sort of like
Other than-
in the scene where you're like, okay, it's nighttime and I'm with a therapist in a building and no one else is there.
Yeah, and nobody else is there, which I think is important.
Yeah.
I mean, that is understood.
Okay. Yeah, it's not very
She's
like
the only one who
Yeah.
keeps the evening hours.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Maybe I could call it evening hours. Well, so what is called is hashtag van life. And I will read you guys starting from the paragraph that's right after that one that I just read. But maybe I'll just set this up to let you know like kind of why I wanted to read this today. I had like a really interesting date with my husband. We were celebrating our 9-year anniversary and we went to a nice, beautiful dinner. And then we decided to hit up this dive bar bar that we used to go to before we had kids. It's called the Swingin' Door. And on Saturday nights, they have dueling pianos, which is so fun. But they didn't have dueling pianos that night, so we just sat out on the patio. And I said, Shawn, will you read my story to me out loud? We had literally been on 2 other dates that week. And I was kind of like, what do we
even talk about?
Like, I'm like, do we really need another date this week? But anyways, and I realized it was time. Like, he's supported me so much. I don't think he's ever read a thing I've written, a creative writing thing that I've written. So, and I had enough. I had some whiskey, so I was sort of ready for whatever was to come. And so I gave him my phone and he read this out loud to me, and then I got his reaction. So I'll read you the first part, and it's about a certain character, and I'll tell you what Shawn thought about that. So Clayton is a rakish 25-year-old man who pays $270 out of pocket to sit in my office where I try to figure out if he's lying to himself or just me. At first, I found his behavior toward women creepy, if not truly alarming. But over the last 6 months, he has won me over. He loves women deeply and recklessly in a way that only exists in the romance novels of the 1980s that I pluck from thrift store shelves. Even if I could share the details of our sessions, I would never admit to anyone that he turns me on. Yes, he's stalkerish. He's very problematic. Still, sometimes I wish I was the object of his desire. Ridiculous, I know. I'm a woman in her 50s with a mole on her neck and tits that take an industrial-sized bra to hike up off her stomach. Still, the erotic part of my brain has not atrophied. Life is short. I've got to squeeze a little mischief and sensuality from somewhere. Questions are normally all I give to Clayton. He isn't much for psychological facts or advice. He won't fill any of the prescriptions he needs. I choose not to push. I keep him comfortable, so he keeps coming back. Plus, he pays cash and doesn't ask for a receipt. I can read between the lines. She wanted me to come over, he says. What did she text back? I ask. She didn't. I stand and open the office window. The room is muggy. The streetlights in the parking lot pop on in the dusk. Are there lines to read between if she didn't text anything to you? I ask. The in-between was all I had to go on. My girl has different kinds of silences, and the silence this morning meant that she wanted me to come by. She wouldn't have left her location sharing turned on if she didn't want me to know where she parked. I suppress a grimace and take a sip of my tea. And how did she react when you showed up at her van? What time did you say it was? It was 5 a.m. She was, I said, come on out here. I said, well, you're up now, aren't you? My daughter, Casey, had been talking about buying a van for weeks. She showed me Instagram posts under #vanlife, images of thin bohemian couples drifting around America, documenting their poetic journeys of self-discovery, believing they were shirking late-stage capitalism. She said, Mama, I can make money just by chronicling a summer road trip. She was Gen Z splaining to me. But I knew what an influencer was. I can't remember which woman he was talking about just now, but Clayton had a type. Older women who were down on their luck. Mommy issues. I offer him a rare nugget of truth. Humans are actually really bad at guessing what others are thinking and feeling. Does that resonate with you? Clayton scratches the scruff on his cheek. Most people don't know their ass from their ankles. But someone like me, when I have a divine connection with a woman, I can hear her thoughts. I can feel her feelings. I'm an empath. It's like a gift, especially if I've made love to them. Sex creates a soul tie. It's in the Bible. All the holy books say it. I almost laugh. Do the women Clayton courts fall for this crap? This was always the uncomfortable part of Clayton's stories, when the woman resists and I don't know if she will succumb. I shift in my chair. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, and then Clayton talks again. Then she let me have the keys and I drove her around a bit. Windows down, sunrise, air in my hair. I nod. I like it when his stories take on this melodic stream of consciousness style. He goes on. I said, buckle up, we're going to Tijuana. My eyes widen. You went to Mexico together? On a whim? He chuckles. Dr. Nelson, I'm here, aren't I? I wanted her to think I was taking her to Tijuana so that when we got to the hills, it wouldn't seem so far. I think this guy needs therapy. Then I remember that's exactly what he's doing here. I should really refer him to someone else. I will, tomorrow. Time's up, no? He gestures to the clock on the wall. Time is up. I won't hear the spicy part. You want me to tell the rest, don't you, doctor? Maybe you should start paying me instead of the other way around. My nostrils feel tight. Blah, 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 because she's like, yeah, and then Clayton is talking more. He goes, this is the funny part. She was hollering back there, and I told her, I'm putting on Bohemian Rhapsody, and it'll sound like you're singing karaoke. I said, and before you ask, I'm not playing any of that Swiftie shit. I lean over in my chair and scan the carpet for my earring. He continues, it worked. It was like background vocals. Mama, ooh. he's singing now. He's acting strange. He should go. And then there's just this part where the narrator loses her earring, and then Clayton crawls toward her and hands her an earring. She says, thanks. And she's on her knees and she puts in her earring and he says, you look good like that. And he says, with earrings on or down on my knees? So yeah, he says he's gonna leave, and then he keeps singing Bohemian Rhapsody as he leaves. Mama, ooh, didn't mean to make you cry. If I'm not back again this time tomorrow. Yeah, and then she sees her next client, and her next client is obviously got a bad vibe from him. Okay, so that's Clayton, the character,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And then more stuff happens. And when Shawn was done reading, when my husband was done reading this short story, he said that it was really good, very twisty, like he liked it. And we had both been drinking and stuff. And he said that later in the story, when Clayton turns violent, my husband said that he didn't think it seemed warranted. Like it seemed to kind of like come out of nowhere for Shawn. And I was like, are you for real?
Yeah.
And he just said that I found Clayton creepy, but I can imagine, so many incel type guys, getting things wrong, thinking somebody likes them that doesn't like them, and, going to their house and thinking they're in a relationship when they're really not, and just being idiots and getting things wrong, and it being creepy and not the best, but that it doesn't mean that the person would end up being a violent person. And so it wasn't super believable. There's also the fact that at the end of the story, when Clayton does get violent, it's not exactly provoked in the scene. It's almost like he's being violent for violence sake. He wants to hurt somebody, not that like he snaps, right?
Oh, I feel like the provocation's happening. I feel like it is happening.
Okay.
I mean, it's an interesting take that Shawn has. 'Cause
Yes.
It's like, I read it very much as the provocation has been happening. And the whole Bohemian Rhapsody, it all ties in, just so, where
Yeah.
that's showing the provocation.
That he has a problem with
That he-
her.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, like somebody saying, or a man saying something like, oh, she didn't text me back, but I can read between the lines. I know that she wanted me to come over, so I'm going to come over there.
Right.
And then somebody coming over to my van where I live at 5 a.m. and banging on the door and hollering for me to come out. To me, that is very scary. The way that Clayton is talking to me is really, really scary.
Yeah.
And then we asked Rachel's husband what his take was, and I was like, oh, maybe he'll have a similar take. Like,
I kind of assumed he'd have a similar take, but I think that was my own mistrust of men.
should we play it into the speaker or just add it in later?
Whichever. I don't know how that would work.
Well, let's play it now so we can react to it. Okay, so we'll play Mark's reaction. We're like pitting our husbands against each other. Good thing
Okay, ready?
Yeah. Okay, so Mark, you just finished reading my first short story I've ever written, #van life. And I was wondering about the guy Clayton in the story. What was your impression of Clayton?
He's a fucking creep. He's like a serial killer.
Yeah, okay.
Did you know he was a creep since the beginning of the story, or at what point did you realize he was a creep?
Yes.
From the very beginning.
Okay, amazing.
Like, he creeped me out at the start. It was when he was like, in the appointment with the therapist. Well, it's kind of set up that way, but then also when he says,
Was he creepy in the
it
therapy?
was like the second page when he's like, there's lines to read between the person who takes him back. It's like, no, there's not. There are no lines to read between. That person doesn't want to see you.
Yeah.
Like, why are you inventing this?
Yes. Oh my God. Okay, great. Love it.
Okay, they got our answer. We're done.
Okay, and then, so no, let's talk about was it at the end when he becomes violent? Did you feel like that was sort of like in line with his character?
Not entirely. I thought at first I was like, he's a creep, probably a serial killer. But then when it's like, I think it was not surprising that he did it, but I was surprised that the daughter was in on it.
Okay.
Because that was fucked up.
Okay. Oh my God, I love it. Thank you so much, Mark.
All right.
Oh, I love Mark. But Mark is such an ally. Like
Yes.
I've seen it time and time again with him.
Yeah, he's a good person. Not that Shawn's not a good person.
No, basically what Shawn was trying to do was he wanted to help me build consistency, I think, and to help me build in, just make sure that the characters' motivations just made sense and just really landed. And so he was just trying to give me a few more lines at the end to make it seem like, just to make Clayton's actions more believable. Where to me, the setup in the therapist's office was really scary, and I could imagine women reading it as very scary, but it's interesting that a man doesn't. But with that being said, he and I had a conversation about it, and he totally agreed, and he's amazing, and he knows the things that I've been through. And then Shawn offered to read my book.
Okay, well, that's great.
But he's just like, it's reading a whole ass book, right?
Yeah.
And he doesn't really read books right now. Like, he'll listen to them on audiobook, but he doesn't have time to sit there and read a book necessarily. But he said he would for me if I thought it would be helpful. And I was like, I think you're going to find it boring. And he's like, no, I know it's not for me. Because it really is. It's kind of like a women's fiction kind of thing. But he said that he might be able to help, like things like that, like consistency and things. There is this one scene in the book where it's basically like a car chase, and there's all these different streets. And Angie, our friend, who was an editor for the Washington Post, who edited my book for me, that chapter, it's like she couldn't even really give me strong notes because she's just like, I don't know where I am. I don't know why this street goes into this street. I thought they were in this building. Like, I wasn't able to write it in a way that I have the map in my head that I've made up, but for some reason I'm not able to write it well. And I think that Shawn would probably be amazing for that.
Okay, so that's great.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to share that with him.
Cool.
Okay, so we should wrap it up. We had one more thing that we were going to do in this episode. So I have...
Well, hold on one second. Once this gets published into some format, the hashtag van life story, we will let you guys know so that you can read it. Because it really is a fun, twisty-turny thriller short story. Like, it doesn't take you more than 15 minutes, and it's legit fun.
Okay, it slaps.
It really does.
Okay, so speaking of Shawn, my wonderful husband, who hopefully doesn't feel too beat up by this episode.
Oh,
do you
yeah.
think?
No, Shawn, you're great. We love you.
We love you.
Yeah.
How supportive is this? He bought me this box. It's called the Writer's Toolbox, and it basically has prompts. And the other day I used it for the first time, and that's what inspired my short story van life. So I'm going to continue to use it because short stories, are a little bit tough for me. So the Writer's Toolbox by Jamie Cat Callan. So she has a spinny wheel. Oh, she has many spinny wheels.
Ooh, obstacles.
Obstacles, protagonists, goals. These are all
action.
An action. And then she has these
popsicle sticks.
And then we have cards. One card says a child with wings. Ooh.
Interesting.
LS is the last straw.
Okay.
Oh, FS is the first sentence. So that's what I use with this. But then I ended up not using... it got me started.
Sure. Which is the point.
Yeah. So we could, and then there's Sixth Sense cards. There's a lot of different ways to use this, but do we want to just do a first sentence or do we want to just...
Let's just wing it. Let's do a first... What did you do? You did a first sentence and a...
All I did was first sentence. That's all I've ever done.
Okay, so let's...
But maybe we should do two things.
Let's do two things.
For fun.
Maybe a first sentence and a last straw, or should we spin something?
I want to have a Sixth Sense card, so that's going to be something I have to incorporate.
Let's spin something. A sixth sense and a first sentence.
Okay. Oh, shit.
And then we'll put it down and we'll take a picture of it so we can share.
Okay, I'm going to spin for obstacles.
Okay. We're going to do the same thing.
Oh.
So we're going to choose the same prompts, but not talk to each other about our stories so that we can come back and read our stories, the whole things, or maybe just synopsis plus a piece of it.
We'll
and
see
then
how long they are and stuff.
Okay. And then see how different the roads were that we went on with the same prompt.
Yeah.
Which I think is super fun.
Oh my God, this is the nerdiest thing we've ever done.
Here,
so
I'm gonna grab these popsicle sticks. So I'm grabbing right now the first sentence popsicle sticks. Which spinny thing is it that you have in your hand?
Well, this one's obstacles. We could do action, protagonist, or goals.
Let's go protagonist. Okay. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Okay, first sentence protagonist, because that's kind of going to be like, how did we go with this protagonist? Like, maybe they'll have the same name or something. Okay.
Oh my God.
And then you want to use a Sixth Sense card, right?
Yeah. Do you want to spin it?
No, you spin it. I'll choose this.
You choose that. Okay. Spinning. Okay.
Yep.
Leora, who loves to visit Israel.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh, this is
interesting.
Wow, that's great. So she's Jewish, maybe.
Maybe. Or she could be
Maybe
like my
she
grandma.
just thinks she's Jewish.
She's a solid Christian woman, and she visited Israel because it's Holy Land, whether you're Jewish or not.
Ooh, okay. Leora. All right. Now, what's our first sentence?
Oh, no. I just cheated. I looked at it and then decided I didn't like it. So I'm going to choose another one.
I'm not gonna do that.
Okay. Oh, wow. This is going to be an interesting story. There were 17 cats living in Larry's basement.
Gross.
Dislike button.
That's not okay.
We need to focus on that. There were 17 cats living in Larry's basement. Wow. That's a first sentence.
Okay, so do you think it's going to get too much with this?
I think that's the point.
Okay. And do we have to leave everything in? Because I didn't leave my first sentence.
No, I think that, well, no, I think we should for the sake of the prompt.
Yeah, because otherwise you could just not do anything.
Right. I mean, I could just send you, I could just bring in a story I wrote through
Just to be
and just like pretend how I, just to pretend,
Just
like
to win.
to tie it in somehow.
The 6th Sense card is ripped upholstery.
Okay, well, it's easy with the cats.
Oh my God. Hell yeah, that works
Okay.
really well. Okay. So
Okay.
I wonder how Leora and Larry are going to be connected.
I mean, they could have been lovers at one point. Laura could be his mom, or Larry could be the dad.
Or Leora could be, well, I'm not going to give you any of my cool ideas.
Okay, yeah.
Because
Let me put
whoever
this back in here.
wins.
So,
Are there any
next-
stakes?
No. What would the stakes be?
The loser has to read their story at your class.
No.
Okay.
How about the stakes are stakes? Whoever has, who's gonna judge, right? Like, but whatever it is, whoever wins somehow.
We're going to have a stakes.
What stakes? Well, we'll just have stakes.
We'll
like
eat
ribeyes.
steak
Yeah.
while we do the podcast so you guys can listen to every smack.
I'll gnaw on the bone. And you'll love it.
All right. Well, okay. There may not be stakes, but we have homework for ourselves because we're adorable.
Okay.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks. See you soon.
Bye.